Catherine Williams set the wine bottle down carefully. "Sir, this is the same vintage. Would you prefer something different?" Richard Blake stared at the black waitress before him. "With that dark skin, maybe you're better suited for the kitchen. Scrubbing dishes. You people always forget your place," he sneered. "This is a 5-star establishment, not affirmative action charity." His white companions roared with laughter. One went live on his phone. Blake wadded his napkin and threw it at her feet. "Pick it up. Show everyone what black waitresses really do here." 40 diners watched. Some filmed. Some whispered. Nobody helped. Catherine stood there, humiliated, while strangers turned her shame into content. But 6 weeks later, everything changed. 5 armed men would storm through those doors hunting a billionaire CEO, and this same dismissed black waitress would be the only thing standing between guns and murder. Have you ever been invisible until the second you became irreplaceable? Catherine Williams woke up every morning at 4:30. Her studio apartment in Queens was small, the kind of place where you could touch opposite walls if you stretched your arms wide enough. But it was hers. On the nightstand sat a single framed photo. Her grandmother, smiling in a church dress, the woman who raised her after both parents died in a car crash when Catherine was 9. The 5 a.m. bus to Manhattan was always packed with people like her. Cleaners, security guards, cooks, the invisible workforce that kept the city running while everyone else slept. Catherine stood near the back, her hand gripping the pole, her other hand practicing finger strikes against her thigh. Small movements. Muscle memory. Nobody noticed. She'd been training in Krav Maga for 12 years. It started the summer she turned 16. 3 men grabbed her walking home from the library. She screamed. People passed by. Nobody stopped. She survived because one attacker's phone rang and distracted them long enough for her to run. That night, her grandmother scraped together 3 months of savings and paid for her first self-defense class. Catherine earned her black belt at 23. Now she taught free classes every Sunday at the community center in her old Baltimore neighborhood. Young girls, mostly black and brown, learning how to stand, how to move, how to see danger before it saw them. She never charged a penny. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head constantly. "Baby, don't let hate make you hard, but never let anyone make you small." Vermilion Restaurant occupied the ground floor of a glass tower in Midtown, the kind of place where steaks cost $200 and wine bottles carried 4-digit price tags. Power brokers made deals over truffle risotto. Hedge fund managers celebrated bonuses with vintage champagne. And people like Catherine kept their heads down and served with smiles that never quite reached their eyes. She'd worked there for 4 years. Manager Giuseppe Castellano valued reliability above everything else. Catherine never called in sick, never complained, never pushed back. To him, she was perfect because she was forgettable. The other servers were the same. Immigrants, working-class families, people who needed the job too badly to risk losing it. Richard Blake had been coming to Vermilion for 6 years. White, 45, hedge fund manager with a corner office and a god complex. He treated servers like props in his performance of success, snapping fingers for attention, sending back perfectly good food just to watch someone scramble. The staff had filed complaints. Management always dismissed them with the same line. "He's VIP. He spends too much to lose." Then there was William Harrison, 52, billionaire CEO of Harrison Technologies, a man who'd built his empire from a garage startup and never forgot what struggling felt like. He'd recently launched a controversial whistleblower protection program that exposed corporate fraud. It made him a hero to workers and a target to the powerful. Death threats arrived weekly. His security team took them seriously. Harrison started coming to Vermilion 3 months ago. He always requested different sections, never made a fuss, tipped well, and learned his servers' names. Catherine had served him twice. Both times he'd asked how her day was going. Both times she'd been too surprised to answer with anything beyond, "Fine, thank you." In the back of the restaurant, past the kitchen, was a small room where staff ate hurried meals between shifts. That's where Catherine kept her medals hidden in her locker, wrapped in an old gym towel. Nobody knew about her training. Nobody knew about her Sundays in Baltimore teaching girls how to break wrists and escape chokeholds. Daniel Brooks, the head chef, had worked at Vermilion for 20 years. He was black, 53, and had watched countless servers endure what Catherine endured. "We all see it," he told her once during a cigarette break. "We all stay quiet. Bills don't pay themselves." Catherine understood. Her grandmother's medical bills were piling up. Rent was due. Pride was expensive. Silence was survival. But survival has a breaking point. And Catherine Williams was approaching hers faster than anyone realized. It was a Thursday night when everything started. Richard Blake arrived at 7 with 3 associates, all white men in expensive suits that probably cost more than Catherine's monthly rent. Castellano seated them at table 12 in Catherine's section. She felt her stomach tighten. Blake ordered a bottle of Chateau Margaux, $900. Catherine brought it, opened it professionally, poured a taste. Blake swirled, sniffed, sipped, then frowned. "This is off. Bring another." Catherine knew the wine was perfect. She'd been doing this for 4 years, but she smiled and brought a second bottle. Same vintage, same vineyard, same year. Blake repeated his performance. "Still off. Try again." The third bottle was identical. Catherine set it down gently and said, "Sir, this is the same wine. Perhaps a different selection?" That's when his voice rose loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Are you seriously arguing with me? Do you know who I am?" He didn't wait for an answer. He picked up his water glass and poured it deliberately onto the marble floor. The liquid spread in a slow, humiliating puddle. "Oh, how clumsy," Blake said, his tone dripping with mock concern. "Clean that up. Get down there." He looked at his companions. This is what happens when restaurants hire people who can't even serve water correctly. Catherine's hands trembled. She knelt down with a cloth napkin, soaking up the water while Blake held his phone above her head. "This is going on my socials," he announced. "Everyone needs to see the quality of help at supposedly high-end establishments." His associates laughed. One of them muttered something about diversity quotas. The other diners watched with a mixture of discomfort and curiosity, but nobody intervened. Castellano appeared from nowhere, his face tight with fake concern. "Ms. Williams, please apologize to Mr. Blake for the inconvenience." Catherine looked up from the floor. Her knees were wet. Her dignity was gone. Dozens of strangers were watching. Some were filming. She forced the words out. "I apologize, sir." Blake left a 1-cent tip on an $800 check. Underneath it, a handwritten note on the receipt. "Earn better." That night, his video got 50,000 views. The comments section was ruthless. And Catherine Williams lay awake in her queen's apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much more she could take. But what she didn't know was that William Harrison had been sitting 3 tables away. And he'd seen everything. Over the next 3 weeks, Richard Blake came to Vermilion 7 times. Every single visit, he requested Catherine's section specifically. Castellano always obliged. VIP customers got what they wanted. The first week was psychological warfare. Blake would accidentally move his chair just as Catherine walked by, causing her to stumble. Her tray would wobble. Drinks would spill. He'd sigh loudly and say things like, "Trying your best today," or "Maybe this job is too complicated for you." His associates played along. They'd order complicated modifications, then claim Catherine got it wrong. They'd ask her to repeat the specials 3 times, then talk over her each time she started. One evening, Blake took a photo of Catherine without permission and showed it to his table. "This is her. The one from my video. She's still here. Can you believe it?" Catherine kept her face neutral. She needed this job. Her grandmother's hospital bills from last year's heart surgery weren't paid off. Her rent was 8 days from late. She had $43 in her checking account. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. But Blake wasn't satisfied with quiet victories. He wanted an audience. Week 2 escalated. Blake started bringing different groups, clients, friends, even his wife once. Each time he'd perform the same humiliation ritual, slightly different variations on the same theme. He'd snap his fingers when he wanted Catherine's attention, the way someone might call a dog. He'd order appetizers, then claim he never ordered them when they arrived. He'd leave tips calculated to insult. 88 cents with a note saying, "lucky number," or a quarter taped to a napkin with, "for your thoughts," written on it. During one dinner, he called Catherine over to the table 6 times in 10 minutes, each time for something trivial. Extra napkins, more water, slightly warmer bread. His guests looked uncomfortable, but nobody told him to stop. On the 6th trip, Blake said loudly, "I know I'm keeping you busy, but that's what we're paying for, right? Entertainment and service." The other diners had started to notice. An elderly white woman at table 9 gave Catherine a sympathetic look one evening and slipped her a $100 bill with a whispered, "I've written to management twice about him. They say he spends too much to lose." It was kind. It was also an admission that kindness changed nothing. Catherine wasn't the only target. Blake had a pattern, and Daniel Brooks had noticed it. The chef pulled Catherine aside during her break one night. "I've been here 20 years, he said quietly. "Blake only does this to staff of color, exclusively. I've watched him be polite to white servers while treating you like dirt. This isn't about service, it's about power." Catherine already knew. She'd watched Blake interact with Jennifer, a white server in her 30s. He was friendly to Jennifer, complimentary, respectful. With Catherine, he became someone else entirely. But the worst night came during week 3. Blake brought his wife for their anniversary dinner. She was a thin blonde woman who looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from looking the other way too many times. Blake ordered champagne and oysters and made a show of being the perfect husband. Then he turned to Catherine and deliberately called her the wrong name. "Shanae, we'll need more bread." 10 minutes later, "Shanae, is our entree coming?" His wife shifted uncomfortably in her seat but said nothing. The worst moment came when Blake dropped his credit card on the floor. It slid under the table, clearly visible, easy to reach if he just bent down. Instead, he looked at Catherine. "Well, are you going to get that, or should I do your job for you?" Catherine got on her hands and knees in her uniform and crawled under the table while Blake filmed from above. She could hear him narrating, "Modern service industry, ladies and gentlemen, literally on their knees begging for tips." When she emerged, Blake's wife was staring at her plate. The other diners had gone silent, and Catherine felt something crack inside her chest, a small fracture that had been building for weeks. That night, Blake's second video got 120,000 views. The comments were vicious. "This is why diversity hires don't work. She should be grateful to even have a job. Typical attitude from people who think they deserve respect they haven't earned." Meanwhile, William Harrison had become a regular. He came twice a week now, always requesting different sections, but Catherine noticed him watching. He saw the way Blake operated. He saw the pattern. One evening after Blake had made Catherine recite the specials 3 times just to talk over her each time, Harrison quietly asked Castellano, "How long has that man been harassing your staff?" Castellano went pale. "Mr. Harrison, I assure you." "How long?" Harrison repeated. "He's a valued customer, sir." Harrison said nothing more. But the next day, his assistant made a phone call. Within 48 hours, Harrison's security team had compiled a complete background check on Richard Blake. They found restraining orders from 2 ex-girlfriends, a settled harassment lawsuit from another restaurant where a Latina server had finally snapped and quit, 3 sealed NDAs from Blake's own company, all involving women of color who'd filed internal complaints. William Harrison had built his fortune on exposing corruption. He wasn't about to ignore it when it happened 3 feet from his dinner table. But what neither Harrison nor Catherine knew was this. Blake wasn't the most dangerous person in that restaurant. In exactly 11 days, 5 men with guns and a murder contract would walk through Vermillion's doors. Their target, William Harrison. Their plan, kill the billionaire, frame the staff, and disappear. And the only person standing between those guns and Harrison's skull would be a black waitress, whose hidden talent nobody had ever bothered to notice. Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Catherine stood in the community center in Baltimore, surrounded by 20 women of varying ages. Most were black and brown. Most had stories similar to hers. Most had decided that being afraid was no longer an option. "Your power isn't in fighting," Catherine told them, demonstrating a defensive stance. "Your power is in seeing danger before it sees you. Awareness is everything." A 12-year-old girl in the front row raised her hand. "But what if you can't avoid it? What if the bad thing happens anyway?" Catherine paused. The question hung in the air like smoke. She thought about Blake's phone camera, about crawling on the floor, about 50,000 strangers laughing at her pain. "Then you make sure you're the one still standing when it's over," she said quietly. "You practice until your body knows what to do when your mind is too scared to think. You train until the response is automatic." After class, Maria, her co-worker from Vermilion, pulled her aside. They'd been planning for 2 days now. A simple strategy: document everything. If Blake harassed Catherine again, Maria would witness it, record if possible, create an undeniable paper trail. "Next time he tries something, we fight back the legal way," Maria said. Catherine nodded, but there was a darkness in her chest that Maria couldn't see. Catherine had already started reviewing the restaurant's security camera blind spots. She'd already practiced de-escalation scripts in her bathroom mirror. She was preparing for war, even if she didn't know it yet. What Catherine didn't know was that William Harrison's security team had briefed Castellano about a credible death threat. Extra plainclothes guards would be present Thursday night. But Castellano hadn't told the regular staff. "No need to worry the help," he'd said. "They'll just panic." So when Catherine arrived for her Thursday shift, she had no idea that 5 killers were already in position. No idea that Harrison had specifically requested her section because he wanted someone trustworthy nearby. No idea that in 3 hours, her entire life would detonate. Castellano pulled her aside at 6 p.m. "Blake's table tonight. Important client with him. Perfect service, Catherine. Your job depends on it." She nodded. She straightened her uniform. She took 3 deep breaths. And then she walked into a trap that nobody had warned her about. The restaurant was 80% full when Catherine approached table 12 at 8:45 p.m. Blake sat across from William Harrison, clearly trying to impress the billionaire with his usual performance of dominance. Harrison's face was unreadable. Blake was in the middle of complaining about the temperature of his soup when the front door opened. A man in a dark suit entered. Then another. Then 3 more, spreading out through the restaurant with military precision. Catherine's training kicked in before her conscious mind caught up. Wrong movement, wrong spacing, wrong intent. At 9:02 p.m., the first gun came out. Man number 1 near the entrance pulled a pistol and pointed it directly at William Harrison's head. "Nobody move! Everyone stay in your seats!" The restaurant erupted. Screaming, chairs scraping, someone's wine glass shattered on marble. Blake went white, frozen in his chair like a statue. But Catherine's body had already shifted into a different state. Time didn't slow down. It sharpened. Every detail became critical. Man number 2 was advancing from behind Harrison, gun raised. Catherine was 6 feet away, holding a tray of dirty dishes. Her brain calculated angles, distances, timing. The tray was metal reinforced at the edges, heavy, 12 pounds with the plates. She moved. The tray's edge caught man number 2's wrist at full force. Bone cracked. The gun flew sideways, clattering under a table. Catherine didn't stop moving. Her elbow snapped into his throat, a precise strike that collapsed his airway just enough to drop him without killing him. He went down hard, gasping. 3 seconds had passed. Man number 1 spun toward Catherine, redirecting his weapon. She grabbed man number 2's jacket as he fell and used his body weight as a shield, swinging him between herself and the gun. The brief obstruction bought her 1 second. She kicked a wine bottle off a nearby table. It flew end over end and struck man number 1 directly in the face. Glass exploded. He staggered backward, blood pouring from his nose. A phone appeared from somewhere in the crowd. Shaky footage, vertical video, but recording everything. Man number 3 charged from the bar area. Big guy, 220 at least, moving fast. Catherine sidestepped at the last possible moment and used his momentum against him. She grabbed his wrist mid-swing and redirected him straight into the wall. His head struck plaster with a sick thud. Before he could recover, she executed a joint lock she'd practiced 10,000 times in the community center. His wrist bent at an unnatural angle. The gun dropped. She kicked it away. 8 seconds total. Man number 4 came from behind, arms wrapping around her chest in a bear hug. Classic rear choke attempt. Catherine dropped her full weight instantly, making herself dead weight in his arms. Then she snapped her head backward. The back of her skull connected with his nose. Crunch. His grip loosened. She stomped down hard on his instep with her heel, felt bones give way, and twisted free as he howled in pain. 12 seconds. The restaurant was chaos now, people screaming, crawling under tables, running for exits. Blake had disappeared entirely beneath table 12, curled in a fetal position, his expensive suit jacket pulled over his head. Someone's phone captured that too. Man number 5, the leader, had a clear shot at Harrison now. But Catherine was already moving, positioning herself directly in the line of fire. She met the leader's eyes. No fear, no hesitation, just cold calculation. "You want him," Catherine said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You go through me." The leader hesitated. Fatal mistake. That 1-second pause gave the plainclothes security officers time to finally react, drawing their own weapons, shouting commands. Catherine saw them moving in her peripheral vision and dove left, hitting the ground as security tackled the leader from 3 directions. 15 seconds from first gun to final threat neutralized. Catherine stood up slowly. Her uniform was torn. Her hands were shaking with adrenaline, but her face was calm. She looked down at William Harrison, who sat frozen in his chair, eyes wide with shock. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Harrison couldn't speak. He just shook his head. Police flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The 5 men were all on the ground, disarmed, groaning. None dead, none with life-threatening injuries. Catherine had been precise, efficient, surgical. Under table 12, Blake emerged slowly, his hair disheveled, his face pale. His phone was still in his hand. He'd been filming himself hiding. That footage would leak within the hour. Castellano pushed through the crowd, staring at Catherine like he'd never seen her before. You know martial arts?" Catherine didn't answer. She was checking the 5 men systematically, making sure none had backup weapons, her training still running on autopilot. Outside, the first news van was already pulling up. Inside, at least 8 different people had captured footage from different angles. The video quality was poor, shaky, but the content was undeniable. A black waitress in a vermilion uniform taking down 5 armed men in under 20 seconds, while everyone else panicked. By 9:30 p.m., the first video hit Twitter. By 10 p.m., it had 50,000 views. By midnight, 10 million. The hashtag #WaitressHero was trending worldwide. News stations played it on loop. Social media exploded with frame-by-frame analysis. "Did you see how she moved? That's not luck, that's training. Who is she? How did nobody know she could do this?" But in one corner of the internet, in the comments section of Richard Blake's old video where Catherine had crawled on the floor, someone posted a new comment that got 100,000 likes. "This is the woman you humiliated. This is the woman you filmed. She just saved lives while you hid under a table. How does it feel to be completely, utterly wrong about someone? Blake sat in his car in the parking garage for 40 minutes, unable to drive, watching his phone blow up with notifications. People were finding his old videos, connecting the dots, posting side-by-side comparisons. Catherine on her knees cleaning up water, Catherine standing over 5 unconscious attackers. The humiliation was complete. Public. Viral. Permanent. But Blake had one weapon left. He was rich. He was connected. He had lawyers. He was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. He called his attorney at 11 p.m. and said 7 words that would destroy him. I need to sue that waitress immediately. 72 hours after the attack, Richard Blake filed a lawsuit. The claim: Catherine Williams had a documented history of violent, aggressive behavior toward customers. He submitted edited video footage spanning 3 months, showing confrontations with all context carefully removed. In Blake's version, Catherine appeared threatening, hovering, aggressive. He claimed emotional distress, reputational damage, and assault. The media narrative shifted like a boat capsizing. "Hero or menace," read the headline on 3 major news sites. "Waitress's violent history revealed," claimed another. Blake gave interviews from his lawyer's office, looking somber and victimized. "I tried to help her," he said to a CNN reporter, his voice dripping with false concern. "I tipped generously. I was patient with her service errors. This is how she repaid basic human kindness." The reporter didn't ask about the videos of him throwing napkins or filming Catherine on the floor. The narrative was already written. Blake's lawyer presented witness statements from 3 of his friends, all swearing they'd seen Catherine act aggressively toward Blake for months. The statements were fiction, but they were notarized. Legal. Believable if you didn't look too close. Then came the worst part. Blake claimed reverse racism. "I believe she targeted me because I'm white and successful," he told Fox News. This is what happens when we lower standards and hire people who harbor deep resentment. The internet comment sections turned vicious overnight. Typical aggressive behavior. She was just waiting for an excuse to attack someone. They gave her a hero's narrative, but look at the facts. Thousands of people who'd celebrated her 3 days ago now questioned everything. Vermillion suspended Catherine pending investigation. No pay, no health insurance, just a letter from Castellano saying, "Until this matter is resolved, we cannot have you representing our establishment." Catherine sat in her apartment with a public defender who looked exhausted before the meeting even started. "I'm handling 87 cases," he told her honestly. "I'll do my best, but Blake has resources we can't match." Her savings drained in a week. Rent came due. The community center called and gently suggested she take a break from teaching until the situation clears up. Parents were concerned. Liability issues. Catherine understood, but it still felt like a door slamming. The worst call came on day 6. Her grandmother had been hospitalized again, heart palpitations brought on by stress. The doctors said she'd seen the news, read the comments, couldn't handle seeing her granddaughter destroyed in public. Maria stopped returning Catherine's texts. Later, through a mutual friend, Catherine learned why. Management had told Maria she'd be fired immediately if she testified in Catherine's favor. Maria had 3 kids and a mortgage. Catherine didn't blame her. The system was designed to make sure people like them never fought back. Meanwhile, Blake was winning. His PR team had crafted a perfect victim narrative. He appeared on podcasts talking about cancel culture and rushing to judgment. He posted on social media about learning to forgive and hoping Ms. Williams gets the help she needs. Every post got thousands of supportive comments. His strategy was simple: bankrupt Catherine, destroy her reputation, make sure she never worked in the service industry again. Blake wasn't just defending himself, he was punishing her for making him look weak. In his POV, sitting in his lawyer's office, Blake felt justified. "She embarrassed me," he told his attorney. "Made me look like a coward in front of millions. She needs to learn there are consequences for making people like me look bad. His lawyer nodded. They didn't need truth. They needed narrative control. But Blake had made one critical error. He'd humiliated someone William Harrison cared about. Harrison had been silent for the first week, recovering from his own trauma, dealing with FBI investigations into the 5 attackers. But on day 8, he made a call to the best defense attorney in New York. I want you to represent Catherine Williams. Cost is irrelevant. I want her vindicated. The attorney's name was Patricia Morgan, 63, black, and notorious for destroying people who underestimated her. She accepted the case immediately. Harrison's security team went to work. They pulled every security camera angle from Vermilion covering the past 6 months. They found Blake's complete digital footprint, emails, text messages, social media posts. They interviewed former employees from Blake's company, tracked down women who'd signed NDAs after Blake harassed them. They even found the original unedited footage from every confrontation Blake had submitted as evidence. 10 days after the lawsuit was filed, Catherine's public defender received an anonymous package. Inside, a USB drive containing 53 video files, 18 sworn statements, and a complete financial audit showing Blake's company had paid 6 women over $400,000 total to stay silent about his behavior. The preliminary hearing happened on day 12. Blake arrived confident, smiling for cameras outside the courthouse. His lawyer wore a $3,000 suit and carried a leather briefcase that screamed money. Inside, Judge Patricia Hernandez reviewed Blake's edited footage. She looked troubled. Ms. Williams, this pattern is quite concerning. Blake smirked at Catherine across the courtroom. Then Patricia Morgan stood. Your Honor, may we present actual evidence? What followed was systematic destruction. The unedited footage played on the courtroom monitor. Every confrontation Blake had submitted, now shown with full context. Blake throwing napkins, Blake pouring water, Blake calling Catherine racial slurs, Blake filming her while she cleaned floors. The judge's expression changed with each clip. Then came the witness testimonies via video link. 3 women, all women of color, all former service workers who dealt with Blake. One testified, "He told me I should be grateful for minimum wage because people like us don't deserve dignity." Another described being cornered in a storage room. The third detailed months of harassment that ended when Blake's company paid her $50,000 to sign an NDA and quit. Blake's confidence evaporated. His lawyer kept whispering urgently in his ear, clearly blindsided by evidence he'd never seen. Patricia Morgan then presented communications between Blake and his friends, showing them coordinating false witness statements. Text messages that said things like, "Just say she was aggressive. They can't prove otherwise." The final piece, security footage from Harrison Technologies building showing the 5 attackers casing it 2 days before their assault. FBI reports proving this was a conspiracy to commit murder, and Catherine's intervention hadn't just saved Harrison's life, it had prevented the attackers from framing Vermilion's staff for the crime. Judge Hernandez removed her glasses. Mr. Blake, I'm referring this to the District Attorney for Criminal Investigation. Charges include harassment, perjury, witness tampering, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Blake tried to leave. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom. Mr. Blake, sit down, now. His wife stood from the gallery, removed her wedding ring, placed it on the bench beside her, and walked out without looking back. Someone filmed it. That video got 5 million views. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Catherine. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, but vindicated. Patricia Morgan stepped in front of the cameras. Ms. Williams has been completely exonerated. The real criminal is Richard Blake, and justice will be served. But the prosecutor approached Catherine before she could leave, her expression serious. Ms. Williams, we need you to testify about your use of force. Some are arguing that 5 men, while armed, didn't justify your level of response. We need to be thorough. Catherine's vindication wasn't complete yet. One more battle remained. The use of force hearing wasn't a criminal trial, but it felt like one. Catherine sat at a table facing a panel of 3 reviewers, a judge, a police violence expert, and a community representative. The question on the table: had Catherine Williams used excessive force when confronting 5 armed men? The prosecution's expert witness, Dr. Raymond Foster, was a white man in his 60s with credentials from MIT and Yale. He'd analyzed the footage frame by frame. Ms. Williams had multiple opportunities to retreat, he testified, pointing to a freeze-frame projection. Security was present. Other civilians escaped. She chose to engage. He clicked to another frame. These strikes, he gestured to Catherine's elbow hitting man number 2's throat, are designed to incapacitate or kill. Ms. Williams has 12 years of training in a combat system. She knew exactly how much damage she could inflict. The implication hung in the air. Was Catherine a hero, or someone who'd been waiting for an excuse to hurt people? Then Richard Blake took the stand. Despite facing his own criminal charges, he was permitted to testify. He'd cleaned up nicely, wearing a modest suit instead of his usual flashy designer clothes. He looked humbled, repentant, a man who'd learned from mistakes. I admit I treated Ms. Williams poorly, Blake said, his voice carefully modulated. I was wrong, and I've apologized. But that doesn't change the fact that she's been trained in violent techniques for over a decade. Those men were armed, yes, but was it necessary to break bones? To render them unconscious? Couldn't she have simply waited for security? He leaned forward, playing to the panel. I'm asking the question everyone's afraid to ask. Should people trained to hurt others be allowed to serve food in crowded restaurants? What happens when someone with that much training loses control? Several people in the gallery nodded. Blake's lawyer had coached him perfectly. He wasn't denying his own guilt. He was redirecting focus onto Catherine's capacity for violence. Then it was Catherine's turn. She walked to the stand slowly, feeling every eye in the room on her. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Washington, began gently. Ms. Williams, why didn't you hide like other staff members? Because I saw a man about to die, Catherine said quietly. You could have called for help. Let security handle it. There wasn't time. Security was seconds away from responding. Mr. Harrison had seconds left to live. But you're trained to kill, aren't you? Catherine felt the trap closing. I'm trained to protect. There's a difference. Is there? The prosecutor clicked to a slow-motion replay of Catherine's strikes. You broke one man's wrist, fractured another's nose, caused a concussion. That's not protection, Ms. Williams. That's violence. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. Her voice rose. You think I wanted to watch people die? You think I wanted nightmares? You think I wanted to see my grandmother in a hospital bed crying because strangers call me a thug on the internet? The room went silent. The prosecutor softened her tone, but pressed forward. 5 armed men, Ms. Williams. You took down 5 armed men in under 20 seconds. Doesn't that seem convenient? Like maybe some part of you wanted this to happen? Catherine stared at her. Convenient? I've spent 3 weeks being called a violent criminal. I lost my job, my savings, my reputation. People I thought were friends abandoned me. My grandmother almost died from stress. You think any of that was convenient? Patricia Morgan stood for the defense. Ms. Williams, tell the panel why you started training. Catherine took a breath. When I was 16, I was attacked walking home from the library. 3 men. I screamed for help. People passed by. Nobody stopped. I survived because one of their phones rang and distracted them long enough for me to run. Her voice was steady now, clear. That night, I decided I would never be helpless again. And what do you teach at the community center? Self-defense? Awareness? How to recognize danger? How to create distance? How to escape? Catherine looked directly at the panel. I don't teach people to hurt others. I teach them how not to be victims. Then why such devastating strikes during the restaurant incident? Because hesitation kills. Because I had one chance to stop each threat before they killed someone. Because I trained for 12 years so that if that moment ever came, I wouldn't freeze. I was ready. And because I was ready, William Harrison is alive. Patricia Morgan presented her key witness, Commander Robert Stevens, a decorated police officer with 30 years in SWAT. He'd reviewed every angle of footage. Ms. Williams' actions were textbook defensive tactics, he testified. Every strike was disabling, not lethal. Man number 2 was conscious, unharmed beyond a bruised wrist. She could have crushed his throat. She didn't. She could have snapped his neck. She didn't. He walked the panel through each engagement. Watch her positioning. She's always creating barriers between herself and firearms. She's using minimal force necessary to neutralize threats. If she wanted to cause maximum harm, all 5 men would be in ICU or worse. Instead, they walked out of that restaurant with minor injuries. Then came testimony from the 3 women Blake had harassed at his previous workplace. Their testimony wasn't about Catherine directly, but it established critical context. One woman said, "Mr. Blake told me I should be grateful for any job at all, that people like us are lucky to even be employed. He made it clear he believed we existed to serve people like him." The testimony shifted the panel's focus. Who was really on trial here? Then Patricia Morgan dropped the bomb. Your Honor, we have new evidence submitted by the FBI just this morning. On the screen appeared security footage from Harrison Technologies headquarters, dated 2 days before the restaurant attack. The 5 men, clearly visible, casing the building. One filmed entrances, another sketched a floor plan. FBI communications expert Agent Lisa Torres testified, "We intercepted encrypted messages detailing their plan. Kill William Harrison, frame restaurant staff, create enough chaos that the real conspiracy would be hidden." She clicked to another slide showing message transcripts. They planned to shoot the CEO, then plant the murder weapon on kitchen staff, claim it was workplace violence. Ms. Williams didn't just save a life, she stopped a conspiracy designed to destroy innocent people's lives. The prosecutor stood slowly. Her face had changed. She'd come here to ask hard questions, but the answers were undeniable. Your Honor, in light of this evidence, the state withdraws all inquiry into excessive force. Ms. Williams acted with remarkable restraint under impossible circumstances. Judge Hernandez nodded. Ms. Williams, you are fully exonerated. More than that, you deserve commendation for extraordinary courage. She turned to Richard Blake, still sitting in the gallery. Mr. Blake, your criminal trial will proceed, and I personally will be recommending the maximum sentence. Blake's face went ashen. He stood to leave, but reporters blocked the doors. Cameras flashed. People shouted questions. His carefully constructed victim narrative collapsed in real time. Outside the courthouse, Catherine emerged to a crowd. Not protesters, supporters, women holding signs. We stand with Catherine. Heroes look like her. Stand up, don't stand down. In the front row stood a young black girl in a karate gi, maybe 10 years old, eyes wide with admiration. Catherine met her gaze and smiled. A reporter pushed forward. Catherine, what's next for you? Catherine looked at the crowd of women, at the little girl in the gi, at the dozens of phones filming this moment. She thought about her Sunday classes, about her grandmother in the hospital, about every woman who'd ever been told to stay quiet and accept humiliation. I think, she said softly, I have some teaching to do. 6 months later, Catherine Williams stood in front of a room that didn't exist before her story went viral. The Dignity Defense Center occupied 3,000 square feet in a renovated warehouse in Queens, with padded floors, full-length mirrors, and state-of-the-art training equipment. 50 women filled the space, ranging from 18 to 65, representing every race and background. They all wore matching shirts that said, "Ready, not violent." Catherine had quit waitressing the week after her exoneration. William Harrison offered her a position as corporate security consultant at Harrison Technologies. Her official job, design employee safety and anti-harassment programs for the entire company. Her real job, teach powerful people that workers deserved dignity and create systems that protected the vulnerable instead of the profitable. The salary meant Catherine could expand her community center classes from one morning a week to a full program. She hired 3 additional instructors, all women of color, all with similar stories. The classes were free for anyone who couldn't afford them. They turned away no one. Her grandmother recovered fully and attended Catherine's first major public speaking event at Columbia University. 800 students packed the auditorium to hear Catherine talk about awareness, preparation, and the difference between violence and self-defense. "Your power isn't in hurting people," she told them. "Your power is in never being caught unprepared." The movement that started with #Waitress Hero evolved into #Stand Up Don't Stand Down, a nationwide initiative that brought self-defense training to underprivileged communities. 50 cities adopted Catherine's curriculum. Over 15,000 women completed the program in 6 months. Corporate America noticed. Over 200 companies implemented anti-harassment protocols directly modeled on Catherine's case. Richard Blake's fall was absolute. He was convicted of harassment, perjury, and witness tampering. 18 months in prison. His hedge fund fired him. His divorce cost him half his wealth. Most of his former friends deleted his contact information. When he was released on parole 9 months later for good behavior, one of his required conditions was 200 hours of community service, which the judge specifically mandated must be completed at Catherine's Defense Center. Blake's first day volunteering was silent and humiliating. He cleaned floors, folded towels, and watched women learn the skills that might one day save them from men exactly like him. Catherine didn't speak to him directly for the first month. On week 5, he approached her after class. "I see now what I couldn't before," Blake said quietly. No cameras, no audience. Just a man finally confronting his own cruelty. "I'm sorry." Catherine looked at him for a long moment. "I don't forgive easily, but I hope you actually learned something here." Blake nodded and went back to folding towels. He had 173 hours remaining. Vermilion underwent complete management restructuring. Giuseppe Castellano was fired. New ownership implemented Catherine's Law, posted prominently at the entrance. "We protect our team. Harassment of any kind results in permanent ban, no exceptions." Server wages increased 40%. A tip protection policy ensured no one could leave insulting amounts. The restaurant became the first in New York to implement a safe word system. Staff could signal management instantly if they felt threatened. William Harrison expanded his whistleblower program and created the Dignity at Work Foundation, a nonprofit that funded legal defense for service workers facing harassment. He personally attended the foundation's launch event and told the crowd, "Catherine reminded me that heroism has nothing to do with wealth or title. It's about character when the moment demands it." The 5 attackers all received significant prison sentences. Catherine testified at their trial with the same precision she'd shown during the fight. Factual, fair, no embellishment. One of them, man number 2 whose wrist she'd broken, wrote her from prison 6 months into his sentence. "You could have killed me. You didn't." That mercy made me think about the kind of man I'd become. "I'm taking college courses now. Thank you for giving me a chance to change." Catherine returned to Vermilion once, as a guest, not an employee. A young Latina waitress served her, recognized her immediately, and whispered, "You're my hero. I start martial arts training next week because of you." Catherine left a $500 tip with a note. "Invest in yourself. You're worth it." Maria, her former co-worker, had found her courage too. She reported a different customer's harassment, became assistant manager, and now spoke at Vermilion's monthly anti-harassment training sessions. "We don't stay quiet anymore," she told new employees. and we never will again. On Sundays, Catherine still taught at the original Baltimore Community Center where it all started. But now the space was packed, wall to wall with women who'd heard her story and decided they wanted to be ready too. Grandmothers trained alongside granddaughters. Business executives learned alongside cashiers. The training had evolved beyond physical defense into economic empowerment, legal rights education, and political organizing. They called themselves Catherine's Squad, though she hated the name and told them so repeatedly. They ignored her protests and loved her anyway. On a Sunday morning in late spring, Catherine stood before 70 women demonstrating proper defensive stance. Her grandmother watched from a chair by the door, smiling with pride. The young black girl from the courthouse, now Catherine's most dedicated student, mimicked every movement with fierce concentration. Catherine corrected the girl's form gently. Good. Remember, this isn't about anger. This isn't about revenge. This is about being ready when the moment comes. The girl nodded seriously, then asked, "Will I ever be as good as you?" Catherine smiled. "You'll be better. Because you started younger, and you won't have to learn the hard way like I did." After class, Catherine stood outside watching her students leave, carrying themselves differently now. Shoulders back, eyes alert, confident without being aggressive. That transformation, subtle but real, was worth more than any viral video or news headline. Her phone buzzed, a text from Harrison. "Board meeting tomorrow. They want to hear your recommendations on expanding the Dignity program to all our international offices. You ready?" Catherine typed back, "Always ready." Because that's what she'd learned through everything, through humiliation and vindication, through violence and peace, through judgment and justice. Being ready didn't mean being violent. Being ready meant never being caught unprepared when the moment demanded courage. And moments always came, for everyone. The only question was whether you'd be ready to meet them. 1 year after 5 armed men walked into Vermilion hunting for a billionaire, Catherine Williams's story had become something bigger than her. It had become a case study, a movement, a warning, and a promise. 3 months post-incident, Catherine was invited to testify before a congressional hearing on workplace harassment. She wore a simple suit, sat before microphones and senators, and spoke for 20 minutes about what it meant to be invisible until violence made you visible. Her testimony led directly to the Service Worker Protection Act, a bill that made customer harassment of service workers a criminal offense, not just grounds for being banned from an establishment. The bill passed with bipartisan support. It was nicknamed Catherine's Law in the media, though the official title never included her name. 6 months in, her story was optioned for a feature film. Catherine had one non-negotiable condition: no Hollywood glamorization. The script had to be realistic, showing the fear and trauma alongside the triumph. All her proceeds went to assault survivor organizations. She consulted on the script personally, making sure they got the details right. The humiliation felt real. The violence looked painful. The aftermath wasn't clean. 9 months after the incident, Richard Blake was released on parole. His community service at Catherine's Center forced him to confront the humanity of people he'd spent years dehumanizing. One afternoon, while organizing storage, he overheard a young woman telling Catherine her story. Harassed by her boss for months, too scared to report it, finally finding the courage after watching Catherine's interview. Blake stood in the hallway holding a box of training mats, realizing he'd been that boss to dozens of people. The weight of that recognition broke something in him. Whether he would actually change remained to be seen, but at minimum, he now understood what he'd been. 12 months after the attack, Harrison Technologies became the first Fortune 500 company to create a Chief Dignity Officer position. Catherine filled the role. Her program trained workers at every level in de-escalation, security awareness, and recognizing harassment. Within 6 months, company harassment complaints dropped 73%. Worker retention increased 40%. Productivity went up. Other companies noticed. 23 Fortune 500 companies adopted variations of Catherine's model within the year. Internationally, Catherine's story resonated in unexpected ways. In Mexico, #Soy Fuerte, I am strong, trended after a waitress in Guadalajara used skills learned from Catherine's viral videos to stop an assault in her restaurant. In France, #Je résiste, I resist, became a rallying cry for service workers organizing against harassment. In China, women shared her story, despite internet censorship, using coded language. The waitress who was ready. UNESCO invited Catherine to Geneva to present a case study on grassroots empowerment. Self-defense training became standard in corporate onboarding at major companies worldwide. Catherine's personal life shifted too. She got engaged to Daniel Brooks, the chef from Vermilion who'd witnessed years of her quiet endurance. They bonded over shared trauma, shared purpose, and a shared commitment to making sure what happened to them never happened to anyone else if they could prevent it. She wrote a book, Standing Your Ground, a practical guide to self-defense and dignity. It became a New York Times bestseller, spending 11 weeks at #1. The audiobook, read by Catherine herself, reached #3 on overall charts. She donated 60% of royalties to community defense programs. Her speaking tour took her to 48 states, college campuses, corporate conferences, community centers, churches. Everywhere she went, the same question, how do I become ready? Her answer never changed. Start today. Learn something. Teach someone. Speak up when you see injustice. Your silence is permission for abuse to continue. The real victory wasn't fame or money or vindication. The real victory was the teenage girl in Atlanta who fought off an attacker using Catherine's techniques. The waitress in Phoenix who reported harassment without fear because she knew the system might actually protect her now. The mother in Chicago who taught her daughter, you don't have to accept disrespect. Ever. Culture was shifting. Slowly, imperfectly, but shifting nonetheless. From endure to resist. From accept to report. From invisible to visible. Catherine's original students now taught their own classes. 3 had opened their own training centers. 5 had become security consultants. 1 joined the FBI. They carried the message forward, multiplying impact exponentially. William Harrison remained a lifelong friend and became godfather to Catherine's future children, a role he took seriously. He attended every major event in her life, not because cameras were present, but because he genuinely cared about the woman who'd saved him. The former prosecutor who'd questioned Catherine's use of force wrote an op-ed titled, I Was Wrong About Catherine Williams. It went viral. She used her platform to advocate for better training in recognizing the difference between aggression and self-defense, between violence and protection. Even some of Blake's former friends reached out privately with variations of the same message. We were complicit. We're trying to change. We're sorry. Catherine accepted some apologies, rejected others, trusted her instincts on who meant it and who just wanted absolution. Now here's what Catherine wants you to do. First, if you've been harassed, bullied, or diminished, understand this. It's not your fault, but your response is your power. You get to decide whether you stay silent or speak up. Neither choice is wrong, but one creates change. Second, learn something that makes you feel capable. Martial arts, legal rights, public speaking, coding, anything that shifts your relationship with your own power. Competence breeds confidence. Third, teach someone. Share your knowledge. Share your story. Power multiplies when it's given away. One person teaching 10 people creates 100 teachers eventually. Fourth, speak up when you witness injustice. Don't look away. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Your voice matters. Your witness matters. Silence is how abuse stays normalized. Fifth, comment below. What's your moment? When did you decide to stand up? When did you realize you were stronger than you thought? Your story matters. Someone needs to hear it. Tag someone who inspires you to be braver. Share this if you believe workers deserve dignity. Subscribe for more stories of everyday people doing extraordinary things when the moment demands it. Catherine's final words, spoken at her most recent training session, captured everything. People ask if I regret that night. Never. I regret that I had to. I regret a world where servers expect abuse, where workers stay silent, where bullies win because good people wait for permission to act. I'm not a hero. I'm a woman who practiced, who prepared, who decided that when the moment came, I'd be ready. We all have that moment. Maybe it's physical. Maybe it's standing up in a meeting. Maybe it's saying no when someone demands your dignity. The question isn't if your moment will come. The question is, will you be ready? The camera pulls back from Catherine standing in her training center, surrounded by women of all ages practicing defensive stances. The morning sun streams through high windows. Their movements are synchronized, confident, powerful. Freeze frame on Catherine's face. Calm, peaceful, strong. Her voice continues. Have you ever realized that the person you've been waiting for to save you was you all along? The screen fades to black. White text appears. Dedicated to every worker who's been invisible. We see you. We stand with you. A resource list scrolls. National Domestic Violence Hotline. RAIN. Local self-defense programs. Workers' rights organizations. Legal aid services. The music swells, hopeful and stirring, then fades to silence.